Welcome to Good Shepherd's Parenting Podcast. This is our third episode entitled Making Your Spouse a Priority. We're so excited to bring back, as always, Father Zack and Joe Tremblay again for this series. And this time, his wonderful bride, Elisa. So we thought if we're talking about spouses as a priority, what better than to bring someone's spouse on this show? And I'm sorry, Elisa, you do the short end of the stick. Here we are, but that's fine, right?
happy to be here.
Oh, good. We're really happy to have you. And so would you mind just telling us a little about yourself? And then we'll get into our icebreaker right after that.
Well, I originally grew up in Connecticut, so I came from a family of 5. Something people don't know about me is that I'm actually half Hispanic.
Really?
My mom, 100% Puerto Rican.
That's awesome.
My dad, French and Austrian. I got none of the Latino genes, so I burn. Anyhow, I met Joe in college. We went to Franciscan University together and got married after college, after grad school. And then we started out in Maryland, raising our family. We have 6 children. We eventually moved to Wisconsin because of his job. And we had the blessing of working, both of us, in the Diocese of Green Bay, him for 10 years and me for over 7 years, almost 8 years. We both got our degree in theology, and I specialized in marriage and family ministry. So that's what I did at the diocese. And in 2023, I switched over, and now I work for Ascension Press. Well, keeping my first priority, which is our children. So our family. We're the proud grandparents of 4.
Awesome.
And maybe a 5th, where we think there might be a 5th one coming.
Nice.
4 grandchildren. And yeah, that's it. We're busy lives.
Absolutely.
3 of our kids in a 12-month period got married this year, so we're dying.
That's crazy.
We prefer to be called Meme and Pepe.
Yes.
That's French.
Meme and Pepe.
Very proud of our French heritage.
Oh,
yes.
Cool.
Yes.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Well, let's just go right into our icebreaker today. What is your most memorable date night fail?
All right, you can kick it off.
You don't want to tell him?
You said
Okay.
You said you
All
wanted to.
right. Well, this is very funny, but it was shortly after we started seeing each other.
Okay.
So I think our first date was Immaculate Conception in December. So fast forward a couple months, it was February, and he wanted to do something
Valentine's Day.
Yeah, very special for Valentine's Day.
Nice.
And so we were both taking a graduate class with Scott Hahn at the time, and we were in class together. So we decided, the first part of, he planned this huge date. The first part of our date, we went to a local steakhouse, like Ground Round.
Oh, yeah.
And so we were standing in line, and we were both kind of critiquing Scott Hahn's class. I'm going to admit,
together.
pretty heavily. We were heavily critiquing his class. And
we're gonna have to edit this out.
okay, this
You
is
didn't have to say heavily.
yes.
We're gonna lose our funding.
That's right.
You can edit that.
No, you're good.
Okay.
You're good. We're rolling.
Anyhow, well, here's the problem. He was standing right behind us, and we were so embarrassed. And I was oh my gosh, we both shrunk to this high. And then, so that wasn't the worst part of it. So
good.
during dinner, it was February, and I caught the flu. So during dinner, he orders this beautiful dinner. I had to excuse myself during dinner because I wasn't feeling good. Barely made it through dinner, and I was like, I didn't want to ruin his date because he did so much work,
Right.
but I was not feeling well at all. So we decided to cut dinner short, and you drove me out to this lake where you had a playlist and these beautiful, treats in the car.
Aww.
And I had to step outside of the car because I got physically sick. And then, and he's like, "What is going on?" I'm like, "Just take me home." And then it was so embarrassing, and I barely made it in the door and got sick again. And I thought I'd never see him again. I thought it was over at that point.
Playlist was that bad. Huh?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
But the Scott Hahn critique was just so bonding that
Yeah,
you're like,
yeah.
I'll give her another shot.
So embarrassed.
Yeah.
On every level, everything
awesome.
about that date.
I love
was
that now you work
just-
for Ascension, and it's just full circle,
It's
right?
full circle
Full
now.
circle, that's right. Yeah,
We do
yeah.
like Scott Hahn, by the way.
Oh, yeah,
I
I'm
will
sure.
put that in there.
I'm sure you do. He's awesome.
We enjoyed
Good
his
save.
class overall.
Yes,
Just
yeah.
not that day.
That's awesome.
He was a good teacher. But,
We're just gonna spend the whole podcast.
Sorry.
We'll talk-
We need to restart this
No,
and
it's
say
great.
college.
It's great. I love it.
I wonder if he heard us, though. I'm not sure. But anyways, so that was our ice-breaking date.
It's our
So
date fail, that's for sure.
That's awesome.
So you have the same one then, Joe?
The same what?
The same answer. You don't have a different horrible date.
No. I will go with that. So
That's good.
Yeah.
Rachel and I were, it was an anniversary. I think it was either our 1 year or 2 year anniversary of dating. And I think it was our 1 year. And we used to live up in like the Denton area, and we were close to a beautiful lake up there called Lake Ray Roberts, and it's gorgeous. I drove over it every single day to go to work, and so Rachel's dad had a canoe, and so we're like, let's go canoeing. It's going to be awesome. And so we planned it all out, had a whole day trip planned, and we were going to fish out there too, and all these things. And the day comes, and it's super stormy and like really, really windy. And so we go out, and we're young. We're like, whatever, we'll do it. So we just went out there anyways, and it was there was nothing about it that was romantic or fun. It was just us fighting the waves and then getting literally cast all the way to the other side of the lake because we were trying to set up our fishing gear the whole time. Yeah. And then by the time that the wind had blown us like a quarter or half a mile away from where we landed, and so then we just had to like row back the entire way, and I was still like fiddling with the fishing stuff, and I like had this idea where I was gonna leave it on one side of the lake and pull it across the other, and so I'm like fiddling with that. Rachel's doing it all by herself, which was not smooth. And then we get to the other side of the lake, I pull the line, it snaps, all the line's gone, wind everywhere, everything was just not fun, and so we just called it a day and went home. Then fast forward to our 1 year anniversary of marriage, and we're like, redemption arc, and so we got a canoe. Same from my father-in-law, and this time we're in Fort Worth. We're right off Lake Arlington, and so we're like, okay, we'll just go out, we'll canoe on Lake Arlington, and we set it all up. We had him drop off the canoe like a few days before. All the stuff is all set. We put it in the car. We drive down, and it starts pouring rain, and we're just like, okay, we're just not going to be a canoe couple. No redemption. So that was basically we don't canoe. So
we take the hint at that point.
Yep. So that was that's our story. Father, would you like to share?
Yeah, why not? On this episode of how I became a priest and why I'm not married. No, this is not so much a story as it is just kind of a lesson to be learned, I suppose. When I was in college, I dated the same girl throughout college for freshman year through senior year, and I had never had a girlfriend or anything like that in high school, so I was very green to the whole thing, right? And I was such an insufferable, when it came to like holidays and stuff, I had this like heavy, cynical view of like everything's consumeristic. So like Valentine's Day rolled around, and all I did was just talk about how much is a big scam, right? It's like all these things.
Oh no!
And she's thinking like he's saying that as a cover for a really great date or something.
He forgot.
Exactly. No, I didn't forget. I just outright decided like I'm going to stick it to the man by not celebrating Valentine's Day, and I forgot like this is not just about me. So I think like the evening rolled around, like all of our other friends who were like couples had like fun dates planned, and I was like, oh man, I really think I'm messed up here. So I ran out to Walmart real quick because I was like, surely they gotta have like chocolates or something, and it was literally just empty shelves, except I remember this like distinctly. It was just a box of SpongeBob SquarePants. Like the cheapest chocolate, like the kind of stuff that you buy at like Dollar General. And I was just like, well, and I felt like I probably would have been better off just not doing anything. And needless to say, she was not happy.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And now I'm a priest. So.
And that was my last date.
Nothing says love like SpongeBob.
It's true.
Nothing
true.
says I care like the last box of chocolates on the shelf.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, today's topic, as we mentioned, is making your spouse a priority. And I'm going to hand it over to Joe to kind of talk about what he kind of dove into regarding research for this. But before then, introducing the topic, I think all of us that are married can relate to when having kids, and then your home feels more like a daycare than a house. And there's no time for marriage kind of bonding, and it causes a shift in your dynamic that you have to wrestle with, right?
That's right.
So just curious to hear from y'all's perspective, much further along than my family, as far as how you've wrestled that out across the course of your marriage.
Yeah. So Elisa and I used to live in Maryland, and we had our first 3 kids there, and we got to a point when we had the third one, it's like, I don't know if I can do this. It just got to be really hard. But after that, it got to be a little easier. You got in a rhythm of multitasking and everything. And we were talking about almost lamenting of the times we used to have, the freedom we used to have to walk in the park and, to go out and have a drink or whatever. And we were very much confined to the house, it seemed like, couldn't go to daily mass as much, and you really had to plan out, if you wanted to go out with the kids, you really had to be intentional about that. So, and I just remember talking to Elisa is that, I think that our love has gone from kind of a romantic love of sparkles and, and shine and all that to one of sacrifice, because we're getting up in the middle of the night for each other, letting each other sleep, taking turns and doing each other favors. And really, I think that when a lot of couples feel like they get to that point when it's work because of the kids, changing diapers and all that, they think maybe their love has lost its sparkle and there's something wrong with their love, their marriage. And I'm of the opinion that it could be that, but I think what is more common is that the love has really turned to a more mature, sacrificial love, and it's actually better than before. Whereas you're focusing on yourselves when you first got married, but now it's real sacrifice. Not just for the kids, but for each other. So me going out to the store late at night so she can have something, to eat or drink because she couldn't do it because of the kids and things like that. Right. So. And you get to that point, and then when you get beyond 2, 3 kids, it does get easier because you're getting used to it. But then your kids get older, and they can help out a little bit. Yeah, I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, ironically, one of the weird defying things in our marriage, which I didn't even realize till after we got married, is that I am extraordinarily a morning person and he is a humongous night person. And our best hours are not really the same all the time. And so he's right. Like I used to be like, how come we're not, going on romantic dates anymore? Well, we had 3 kids, screaming in the living room, and you just kind of lament over everything. But then I realized that when he, in the middle of the night, one of the kids gets up and he's like, sweetheart, you stay sleeping. I will take care of this one. You just like, oh my gosh, it is a deeper love than I had felt even when we had the roses and, the long walks and
dates.
The dates. And not that those things, shouldn't be there, right? We keep those up. But when you start sacrificing for each other and so like I'll get up early in the morning and make sure things are ready and let him sleep in, so you end up like really start giving and taking. And yes, it does get easier.
So when you're newly married, I think, this is my opinion, is that your default is let's go out and have a good time. Let's go out and, and that's legit. Right. So. But when you have kids, your default is the kids, and it's not really towards each other. That's why you have to be very intentional about going on date nights and things like that. Right. But not only date nights every couple of weeks or every week, whatever, but you need to have those conversations with each other on a nightly basis because it can be totally consumed with parenting.
Yeah, but I do really like, I think there's so much to be said about that perspective for today's day and age, because I think as a young parent, it's really easy to fall into the trap of this delusionalism, right? That the world speaks about marriage in this very like romanticized way, right? And the reality of marriage is very difficult. It's very trying. It's challenging, right? It brings out everything inside of you, right? And more, right?
That's right.
And
That's
the dichotomy there, I think, is something that really needs to be recognized, right? That the Catholic's definition, the Church's definition of marriage is different from the world's, to avoid this sort of delusionalism where we try to fit the notion of sacrifice within the world's romanticized pie-in-the-sky version of what marriage is supposed to look like. And I think the more that we as Catholics can really be honest about the difficulties of marriage, but also that marriage is meant to be difficult and sacrificial, the better for our married couples, and especially for those who find themselves struggling. Because when you find yourself struggling and you expect it, then you can offer it up. Then you can be intentional with it.
That's right.
But when you find yourself struggling and you feel...
You think it's not normal.
Then you start to blame, right? You start to blame yourself. You start to blame your kids. You start to blame your spouse. And that's when all sorts of problems start to unfold. And so I think it's so important for us to define reality, right? And what this sacramental reality looks like. So.
That's right. We both like a Hallmark Christmas, and we don't like it a lot, but we do like it.
We do
we do, but we critique.
Like Scott Hahn, apparently.
We also, the plot is the same thing, every time. But it's always, movies are like this too, and Hollywood has been like this for the last 50 years. And so it's always about the beginning, falling in love.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
It's hardly ever about staying in love.
Yes.
So staying in love requires sacrifice. Falling in love is pretty easy.
Yeah.
So, and you got the attraction and the newness of it all and all that kind of stuff. And so, if you don't have a family or parents or any other standard other than what you see on TV,
right.
When you come across having 2 or 3 kids and it gets tough and you're no longer going out like you used to, you can actually, use the Hollywood standard to interpret that.
Yes, absolutely. Especially if that's just like what's there. Like if you haven't intentionally seen or searched for another framework, right? Father, have you encountered this like in your own priesthood, sort of like this pie-in-the-sky version of what you thought priesthood would look like versus the daily reality of it? Or do you see it in the confessional with marriages or in your interactions with engaged couples? I'm just kind of curious.
I suppose I could answer that question kind of in 2 dimensions. I mean, first of all, I agree with what Joe said. I mean, when you're talking about the Hallmark movies, right? At the end of the movie is, all right, guy finally gets a girl, girl finally gets a guy, and they fall in love, and then the credits roll, and it's like, all right, now what? You know what I mean? That is, you're right. That is kind of and I realize when I bounce around, I'm at weddings, and like, here's like the weird kind of thought I've had about like weddings I've been to, not necessarily as a priest, obviously, but like weddings I've been to for friends or whatever. Sometimes the last I've seen of some of my friends or acquaintances were at their wedding. Like so my last memory of them was just like, you may now kiss the bride, and then the big party and the reception, and then it's like, then what happens? And I think that's kind of like everyone's like the last time they saw many couples in their life was just at the beginning. So that's all that we see, it's like all we are accustomed to knowing is like that happiness that's at the beginning. So what's around the corner, so to speak, remains hidden to many people. So it does come as a surprise, I think. I don't know. To answer this from my own perspective, there were... In priesthood, no. I wouldn't say that. I think by the time I was ordained a priest, I had a pretty sober outlook on things. I really did. It was more when I first entered religious life. That was when there was a honeymoon phase. It's I get to wear a habit. I get to.
How long did that last?
I don't know, 10 minutes. Then obviously you realize, wow, I have in close proximity with all these guys, and we want to kill each other. So there was certainly a honeymoon phase there as well. It's like it's with anything, right? Anytime. It's why I always. You talk about the confessional, like something I hear in the confessional all the time. Who do people complain about most? Who do people complain about resentment, anger, frustration? It's not their boss. Yeah. It's not the random people they might see while they're driving. Right. It's the people they live with every day. Like anybody can be a saint to the people they see for 10 minutes a week.
That's right.
It's the people who you're living with every single day where love has to actually endure and not just be a spark. That's where the rubber hits the road.
Yeah, and that's I was reflecting recently on the gospel passage about loving your enemies, right? And I think I always interpret that as like the people that I have a hard time with. But I think it's also super key to point that at the people that I love. But there's parts of them that are hard for me, right? That are kind of the enemy, because when that part comes out, then I get defensive or whatever like that, And so I think even just in that gospel passage, Christ is saying that our love needs to be whole for others, right? In their beauty and also in their struggle, in the parts of them that are easy for us and the parts of them that we find more challenging. And I think that same love is applied to ourselves, right? That Christ calls us to accept his love for every part of us, the part of us that is a friend to ourselves and the part of us that is an enemy to ourselves. And it's the wholeness of that love that is so important to being able to sacrifice for marriage.
That's why I just love that marriage is a sacrament.
Yes.
That it's not just another thing we do. It's not just a civil union.
Yeah.
It's elevated to the level of sacrament because we need those graces.
Yeah.
And so I get to work with a lot of married couples. And I tell them, like, hey, listen, this getting married in the church isn't like booking a venue.
Right.
You are getting a sacrament.
Yeah.
And because you're going to need it, because you need to draw from those graces, and then also draw from the graces of the other sacraments, the Eucharist, confession, to get you through all these hard times, to put yourself second, to have the ability to do that. I just think we are so blessed as Catholics to have that. Sometimes I wonder how people without that get through the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know that you, Joe, had mentioned kind of in your research for this, the emphasizing the sacramentality of marriage. So I'd be interested to kind of hear your perspective on that.
Well, it's Fulton Sheen. He wrote a book back in the 50s. And it's called 3 to Get Married. And so it really is 3 to get married. It's the Holy Spirit, the Holy Trinity, binding the two together. And it's and especially when the other person is disagreeable. Here you have, we get to read the Word, and Jesus is reminding us. If you, before you take the speck out of your spouse's eye, I know he doesn't say spouse,
right.
But take the plank out of your own eye. And so he's teaching us to be self-aware. And if we're, kind of paying attention and being self-aware of our own faults and everything, we're going to go a little easier on our spouse's faults.
Right.
We're going to be more patient. We're going to put it in context. We're going to be quicker to apologize and things like that. And so, we read it in the Word, and yet the Holy Spirit with his power and love, gives us that strength, to go the extra mile to make that reconciliation happen.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Absolutely. And even just viewing it from the lens of a sacrament. Again, we talk about like just entering into Catholic marriage with the right perspective of the sacrifice, but also the sacrament, and thinking about all the acts in marriage are extension of that sacrament, right? Like that's, and to think about the weight of that, the gravity that in all of it, we are the infused grace for our spouse, right? We are a symbol of Christ for our spouse, right? And do we take that seriously? And that the Catechism speaks that our spouse is second to none, right? Like our spouse after God is our priority, right? And that's because the spouse is bound up with us in the messiness of this amazing sacrament. But again, like, do we take that seriously, right? Do we really prioritize the heaviness of that, or do we get lost in, again, this sort of like mistiness of falling in love, right?
Elisa used to be, as you mentioned, the director of marriage and family at the Diocese of Green Bay. So we would give these marriage prep retreats and have sometimes 50 couples there, like at a hotel, and there'd be a lot of people. And the theme that came up in Elisa's talk over and over again is the difference between covenant and contract. Contract is a conditional kind of love. You do this for me, I'll do that. Whereas covenant is unconditional. I'm not going anywhere. I'm right here. And you can rest assured that I'll be here at your side through thick and thin. So, and that's another dimension too that I think the world has lost sight of.
Yes.
So, but Elisa, you did a good job at talking about that.
Well, I'm going to joke here. We did learn covenantal theology from Scott Hahn.
That is true. He gave us a new appreciation
I always liken it. I had somebody I knew who got married very, very young. The family was trying to talk them out of marriage, and they insisted, I have to get married. I love this person. And I remember just before they got married, this person said, as long as she remains 120 pounds, our marriage will be good. And I just remembered gasping, like, that's not right. Like, and even before I knew much about marriage, I just knew instinctively that wasn't a marriage that will last. And sure enough, it did not. And so that's very
After 6
contractual.
months.
And it wasn't because she gained weight. I just want to make that. And no, I just knew that's if you go in and counting the cost, like I do this, you do that. I did these 10 things, you have to do those 10 things. Like that's not a way to approach marriage. You have to go in, unconditionally, and it's not easy to do. I will admit that,
Right.
but
So,
that's how we have to have it.
Absolutely. And so we're talking about this, the sacramental nature, the covenantal nature, the sacrificial nature of marriage. What do we say to that person who's listening, who is like, all this sounds great, but like, I don't even know what that looks like. I mean, I am looking at my own marriage so far. It feels contractual. It feels like we fell in love and now we're stuck, like how do I access those graces?
I would say step away for a little while, however you can, and start to have those conversations. Like, hey, listen, I just feel like we are not connecting on the same level we should be connecting on. So I always say one person in a relationship is kind of like the barometer, so who can kind of sense the temperature and the pressure of the relationship much better maybe than the other person.
Yes, yeah.
And so in that case, there are times when Joe and I, made sure kids were home with a sitter, and we just went on a long drive just so we could have time to talk to each other and time to step aside and say, hey, we're not connecting. Hey, something's off. Let's talk this out now, and I think doing that often, not every day, but you don't want to be a nag about things, but doing that when that barometer feels off and not letting it build, is a great way to get started. If it's really building, then I would say don't be afraid to seek help, and start asking, religious, start asking for counselors, start asking friends and family to help you. But I think it's important that, those things be addressed and not ignored, because resentment, as you know, can just build so fast.
Yes.
The social connections, I think, is going to be really key for that person, who's looking for something. Right. It's not just professional help, it's also having friends that see life in a different way, but a better way,
True.
Yes, very true.
And so one of the great things that you've shared over the years, Elisa, is that when you're in high school, it felt like your world was kind of falling apart, the difficult family and everything, so you had a difficult time with that. But there's this one family, or this one teacher that had a great Catholic family, was it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that just inspired her. So he became the template for her. Yeah. But she didn't know exactly what it looked like, but she got a glimpse of it, right. Just by being near him and talking to him. I forgot how close you were with him. But,
he was a teacher of mine.
He
had a large Catholic family, and at a time when my family was falling apart through divorce, this guy was just a beacon of light. Mm-hmm. And the thing I noticed most about his family was that they were happy. They were just joyful. Mm. And I just remember kind of making a personal vow in my senior year of high school that is what I want. Yeah. I want a happy, large Catholic family, who could be a joy and a beacon to others. Yeah. And so just kind of set out trying to achieve that for better worse,
right.
Over the years.
She married me.
And that's why we do laugh a lot. That's for sure.
We do laugh. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah. I mean, friendship and marriage is so key too, right? I think that's what you're mentioning, right? Is recovering the friendship beneath marriage. I'm gonna pull out my Aristotle here, and he talks about that friendship requires a third thing, right, to unite you. And so the perfect friendship, the ideal friendship, is the one united sacramentally in Christ, right? Like that is the deepest friendship you were ever going to encounter, right? And so the spouse as the friend, when the spouse can't be the romantic sort of or like the pursuer or pursuant kind of thing, and it can in maybe smaller ways, but maybe not in the way that it could have been when you were dating or things like that. To really rely on the friendship of the spouse and develop that, I think is super key. And that's something that my wife and I have seen early in our marriage is so key. Is we don't, I mean, our situation with our kids is it's crazy. And so we do not have much bandwidth at all for dates. And so what do? We make it happen where we stay up, 10:30 at night, whatever it needs to be, and we talk, and maybe not every night, right? We some nights fall asleep, whatever, do whatever we need to do. But we make a habit of sitting up and just sharing and being there for one another. And that's been so beautiful for us.
Yeah. I think, when we talked about the priority, that for us, it's God, it's each other, then our kids.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are scandalized by that. And then everybody else, really. And if you can kind of practice doing that and living that out somehow, things fall into place.
Yes.
Like the Ten Commandments. You haven't mentioned in our little outline here that the first three are about God, but the fourth one is about honoring your parents, and that's honoring a married couple. So it's about a married couple, And I always told, when I taught high school, I said, listen, if you get the first four right, everything will fall into place. All the other commandments, you won't have to even worry about that. But if you don't, then we're going to be worried about, the fifth commandment, sixth commandment, seventh commandment, things like that. So that priority is really important. And so how do we express it? We refuse to compromise if it's going against our conscience on some matter. And we definitely pray to God throughout the day and really seek Him out as the first one. So
and that's a revolutionary thought to a lot of people is that it's God's spouse kids. It's not God kid spouse.
Yeah. I would also add we try very hard to be a united front with our kids.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
So even if we have to stop, say, we'll get back to this situation, and then, him and I will go off and discuss it, because the kids will divide and conquer very easily.
Exactly.
And, and so I just think one thing we learned pretty early on was to be a united front, and that helps keep that priority.
Yes.
Right?
And not just with the kids, I think with everyone, what I mean? Like, I think that's so key is whether it's like family, extended family, whether it's friends even, I think it's so key to always try to operate as a united front as much as possible, and that's so key. Father, what kind of advice do you give to couples that are struggling with resentment or just kind of in difficult situations in their marriage?
Oh, God.
I thought that was a softball for you.
Yeah, that's why I'm a marriage counselor, right?
I thought all priests were. Is that not a thing?
Yes, I think a lot of people wish that I was a lot less expensive. I don't know. I mean, I feel like it was somewhat redundant, right? But I mean, I kind of have maybe two things. One you already addressed, which was just communication, right? I mean, once people stop talking, all sorts of nasty stuff starts happening.
Yes.
Resentment is like bacteria that needs a perfect breeding ground, and I feel like resentment is like the petri dish for that, right? Or lack of communication, I should say, is the petri dish. The other thing I was going to say, and this is something I feel like I end up bringing this up more often than not with couples who come with issues. People bring so much of their own baggage into marriage all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's from past family issues, if it's their second or third marriage, from past marital issues. there's no such thing as a marriage where two people are coming in completely, oh yeah, I've got absolutely no past woundedness or anything. But I think so few people are aware of that.
Yes.
Aware of what they bring into marriage.
That's right,
You know, it's why like when I do a wedding prep with a couple and we're going through the long kind of intake forms, I'll always like give extra pause on some of the questions regarding like, is there anything about yourself that your spouse does not know? And almost the way I want to ask that question is there anything about you that you don't know? Because like some people are like, you know, the things that kind of evolve into major boogeymen throughout a marriage, like at one point probably they were dormant. Like people didn't like someone didn't even realize like that was a problem that they dealt with, you know. But maybe just the environment and the stress of a marriage brings that out of them.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess there's really no solution to that. But I do. It's why I've always kind of operated out of the assumption that like everyone should see a counselor at some point in their lives, like to help just develop some emotional intelligence and some self-awareness. Like, hey, here are the things I struggle with, because like as much as marriage is a joint venture, it is still two people becoming one flesh.
Right.
So both people need to be very aware of what they bring into the marriage,
That's right.
beyond just their gifts and their attraction and their love, but some of the past wounds and stuff. I mean, Lisa, I mean, you mentioned, Joe, about some of the stuff in your own family's background and things like that. Like I can't imagine that has not been in some way, shape, or form present, you know, in your marriage, right? I mean, and if it hasn't been, it's something you had to work through.
Yeah. Well, I don't mean to interrupt you, but by the grace of God, I had, I did have, you know, found Christ in college, and so was able to develop a prayer life, and I had the inspiration actually long before I met Joe that I did not want to bring some of this baggage into my future marriage, because for me, I just felt like I didn't want to burden him with all the things that I had gone through, and at least I didn't want him to have to equally carry it. So I did I tell everybody I did a twofold thing. I was able to have spiritual direction at the time, and I was able to work with, you know, priests at the college to, you know, grow spiritually and an awareness spiritually. But I also went through counseling, and group counseling was really helpful, but also like just, I don't know what they call it, like maybe behavioral therapy, just learning how to take those thoughts and do something with them and put those triggers in a safe place in my life. And I will say that has paid off in droves.
Yes.
Droves.
I can only imagine. It's something, you know, I've realized one of the things I run into a lot is like, okay, in front of a couple, right, we're at my desk, we're speaking, or maybe it's just sometimes one person. Actually, that's probably more common, is that someone says, Father, I want to talk to you. I'm having trouble in my marriage.
Yeah.
We'll come in, you know, I always make it clear I'm not a marriage counselor, but we'll talk. And it always ends up with me saying, I really think you should consider marriage counseling, right? Here's some counselors I know who would be, you know, I think a good fit. And I hear one thing probably 90% of the time, which is, I want to do it, but he doesn't or she doesn't. And, you know, it's just a reminder to me that, like, even that's the baggage people bring in, right? It's like, I don't need any of that. You know, I've got nothing wrong with me. It's got to be your problem. So, like,
That's right.
Marriage counseling, I don't know what good that's going to do. You're the problem. You know what I mean? So I think sometimes if people don't address their own stuff at the beginning, even solutions are hard to come by, because everyone's just operating like from this place of complete deficiency.
But I think there is always something to be done, right? Because insofar as marriage is a partnership, each party always has freedom in marriage too. And so that's like a message I always want to send in the couples that I encounter, or situations that I minister to, is like, you are always free. Like, you are choosing to be to play your part in your marriage, right? And of course, in some situations where abuse and things like that, like let's caveat those out of this situation, right? Because those are terrible and people need to get out of that, right? But a lot of dysfunction does take two, right? And so even just going to counseling as one person in a marriage can be so helpful because you can see what you're allowing to be brought to the table or how you can react differently or things like that. And I find that sometimes people use that as an excuse, right? It's like, oh, I want to do it, kind of not really, but my spouse, they don't want to do it. And it's like, well, you could do it yourself.
No, that's a great point.
What I mean?
I would say that happens very often is that only one person ends up getting a counselor. And my thought is, yes, that's one is better than
nothing, right? Because often marriage is not the ideal.
Because at the end of the day, at the very least, it's help in just being able to process and endure some of the difficulties that you're going through and see, I can't change another person, but I can change how I kind of relate to another person.
Absolutely, yeah. And I remember I heard one time that I just kind of want to tie this back into communication and why this is so important to communication because we talked about earlier as communication being key, right? And so it's just like, well, why don't we just talk? The 3 rules of a dysfunctional family I heard are don't feel, don't talk, but everything looks good, right? That's sort of like the social media family, right? That's the pressure that we all see is, you get the snapshot of the Thanksgiving dinner and you don't hear the actual conversation and people wanting to throw things at each other or whatever, right? That actually happens. And it's in that order for a reason, right? That people don't want to talk because they don't feel safe in their skin or in their emotions. And I think people can only feel safe in their skin or in their emotions when they're comfortable with what they've gone through, right? Because like, let's say that something Elisa says brings back a difficult experience for you, Joe, that you are not willing to enter into at this moment. You shut it down. At that point, Elisa feels dismissed and then the communication breaks down, right? And so it's so key that we are able to possess ourselves, right? And we can only do that by bringing our entire selves into the light of Christ, right? And of course, if we're doing counseling, make sure it happens in a Catholic context because a lot of counselors can lead you astray. But it's, and even if it's not counseling, there's always a way to bring our own woundedness, our own reaction, our own emotions into the light of Christ for his healing. And that I think is what's so key to have good communication and trust in marriages.
And it does take courage for people to go to counseling because a lot of them are afraid they are going to encounter things, they don't want to encounter.
Right.
Especially when you start digging up things.
Yes.
Inner healing ministry does that. And so that is something that's very difficult. Sometimes talking about trauma is a trigger for trauma.
Right.
So it requires a lot of love, a lot of knowledge about how this whole thing works, in counseling or inner healing ministry and things like that. So, but you're right, Father. A lot of people are unaware. I remember going to, they're a married couple. They were training me for inner healing prayer ministry. But I had to go through it myself. And they're like, okay, what's the bad fruit in your life? I'm like, I'm good.
I got nothing.
And that's where you need your barometer, right? Your spouse barometer.
He's not the barometer.
Yeah, no, I'm not. And so, and the guy who was praying with me, he did the same thing too. I'm good. And I think that's the reason why a lot of guys don't show up to these things. So, but anyways, so with our when we were given these retreats for engaged couples, we had a forgiveness talk.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. And I said, listen, you will be bringing things into your marriage, whether you know it or not, or like it or not, if you don't forgive and deal with some of these issues. But forgiveness is one thing that is very important that you can do, you can start doing to eliminate any kind of baggage that you might be bringing in. It's not the end all and be all, but it's very, very important. And so we talk about this the story of forgiving our own relatives and everything. We said a year novena. We decided to pray for a reconciliation with her father after about 5 years of marriage, and we started on a very specific day. We prayed in a rosary novena. It was like on April or May the 1st. And then it ended on April the 30th, and that's when he called. And she hadn't talked to him in about 10 years.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I just want to offer just a short story of
Yes.
hope for
Please.
the couple where one really wants to get help and the other person is resistant. And so Joe's right. We were in a position where my dad had left the family and was not talking to us. And you know how they say, is there a rock so big even God can't move it?
Oh, yeah,
I would
yeah.
have told you that was the rock that even God could not have moved,
Yeah.
right? We just thought there was no hope, that he would never come around and talk to the family again. It was very resistant and gave us several clues that he did not want to do it.
And you had forgiven him.
Oh,
you know,
yeah, absolutely. I had forgiven him, kind of let go of his throat, had moved on.
You're
and
ready to see
we
him.
were just ready for there to be a change. So in a very innocent way, we just started praying a novena for rosary every day for 365 days.
Wow.
And actually, I wasn't expecting anything magic. I just wanted to do it for him.
Yeah.
And much to our surprise, on day 365, I can't make this stuff up, he called us out of the blue. I didn't even know he had my number. We were in a different state. And that rock was moved, and there was tremendous reconciliation. And so I am a firm believer,
Yes.
I will tell anybody who will listen,
Don't lose hope.
that prayer changes things.
Yes.
And sacrifice. And it was hard. We had little kids trying to say the rosary. Sometimes we'd be dozing off, and but we did it. And we've done other sacrifices since then. And if that spouse is resistant, you can still do something, and that something might be prayer.
That's great.
Yeah, and I really want to highlight underneath that it started with a choice, because when you share that cross, that struggle, then Joe has a choice there, right? Oh, that's Elisa's problem, right? She just needs to figure that out on her own. I got my own problems. Or that is our vocation as a married couple to enter into that as one, as a sacrament, and address it as a couple. And by doing that, I'm actually going to find a piece of my heart and my healing that God has in store for me that I wouldn't have otherwise found, right? And it's that decision that I think joins you as a couple, to where like you can face one another's suffering as one. And I think that unity is what's so key for marriages, is that I don't want to build codependency in marriages, right? There needs to be like a free decision among either party, right? And not a reliance on one and the other to sort of regulate. But when you see the other person struggling, to actually see that struggling as part of your vocation to carry, to pray through, and to address, I think that's like one of the beautiful things in marriage.
Yeah. And I tell people that, there's two things that had to happen for that reconciliation to come about. And one is that, and we didn't tell you this, is that one person had to suffer, and it was him. He had fallen on some ice in upstate New York, and he thought he was going to die.
Yeah.
So, okay, that was in January. And then he called us in April, late April. But so he thought he was going to die, but someone, rescued him and everything. Got him to think about his family, And during that time, though, during that year, we had to make a sacrifice, a prayer.
Yeah.
And God honored that, and he came through.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Father, I thought were you going to say something earlier?
No,
Okay, cool.
I've just been listening.
Okay, cool. So I thought I might have cut you off there. So cool. Yeah, I think that's such a beautiful testimony to how couples can come together. I think it's Saint Therese of Lisieux who says that God doesn't waste any suffering, right? Like that idea.
That's right.
And I think that can be really true in marriage too. That there's always a way that God can use the crosses that we share in the humanity of our own marriage for His glory too.
Yeah, Lisa would always complain that I would pray for suffering and it would skip over me and go to her.
That's awesome. I want to take a turn toward the end here just to ask about all this thing, right, being bonded together sacramentally and sacrificing for one another, allowing our love to mature. That's great. But I'm a single mom, or my partner is completely checked out. I'm in a very difficult situation where that's literally just not a reality. What then? What then?
And what then? And so what then for what? Like, can they continue to grow in their relationship with God? Of course.
Yeah.
I think going back on the sacrament of marriage, I don't mean to dwell on this too much, but my mom was separated from her husband, and after many years, she did find the courage to forgive him. But I said, you can't forget that your job is to still get him to heaven, right? So, that she ended up taking that to her grave and really prayed for his salvation. So if, the first thing that comes to my mind, if you're a single parent and you're dealing with a difficult spouse or someone in your past, try and find a way to forgive them deeply. That'll heal you so much.
Yes.
That'll change your outlook. And then try and pray them to heaven if you can. And I don't mean to make that sound so like ideal or idealistic, but it's a real tangible thing we can do. And again, you're helping them, but it's also helping your heart too. And then I just think also community is so important. I know that there were times when Joe had to travel for work. He had a job at one point that took him away for several days of the week. And so he'd be gone 3-4 days of the week, almost each week, sometimes longer. And I just had to heavily lean into the community that we had. So family, friends, and that made my job lighter.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like I carried that burden alone.
Yeah.
So I would also say that, whoever you can lean into,
Yes.
be it family, friends, church community.
Right.
Some of our church friends were family to us.
Yeah.
And that we're meant to carry each other's crosses
Absolutely.
in a sense and help one another. So I don't know if that's what you were looking for.
No,
but-
absolutely.
There was a saying in the early church, and very live, very much aware of this distinction among them about baptism. So in case people were being martyred, Christians were being martyred, and so this theological distinction, came about that you have that God works through the sacrament of baptism, but He can work outside of it too, through the baptism of desire and
Yes.
the baptism of blood too.
Right.
Now, the image of God may be, incomplete because you only have one parent there for the child or for the children. But God can work around that too. Yeah. Ideally, you want both to be together. Divorce is unfortunate and everything. But, he can be the father, maybe through a coach, maybe through a teacher and things like that. I remember reading the book of Dr. Ben Carson, and he was saying how difficult it was seeing his father walk away from the family. But his mom never complained. His mom never complained about her husband. And so she did a wonderful job of, casting him in the best light possible, because it was important for their kids to think well of the father, even though he didn't deserve it necessarily. Yeah. Because if you grow up, being embittered and things like that, it's going to hurt the child. It's going to hurt them as grown-ups. That might be one of the baggages, so to speak, they carry into a relationship. So even though there's the misfortune of divorce and a broken relationship there, that mother or the father, can be a really beacon of light for the children. So, and God can work through that in a very powerful way.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Something that comes to mind for me is, I think sometimes we fail to let ourselves mourn what we lose to. And I think that's also an incredibly important part of the healing process. Mm-hmm. I think our world is so consumed with anxiety and looking perfect that we don't actually take, again, reality seriously, right? Mm-hmm. You can manifest reality. You can pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You can figure it out. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes life just rocks you with something that you literally can't figure out and you have no idea what to do. Mm-hmm. I think the first step there is just to admit that and to allow yourself to feel that and to bring that as a prayer into the Lord's presence, and that isolation, that loneliness, that whatever it is, that the inability to be what you thought you were going to be as a parent, the death of your family that you'd always pictured from when you were a little girl or a little boy. Instead of ignoring that or pushing that down, allowing that to become your prayer before the Lord and inviting His communion, because God is communion itself, right? He is the community of communities upon which the sacrament is based, right? Mm-hmm. Inviting Him into that. And again, inviting trusted people into that as well. Finding that community, like you mentioned, Elisa, I think is so key. Mm-hmm. But I think that's a stat that we often miss is really embracing our reality and then seeing it as a cross that the Lord can work through, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that on the other side of that death is where we can find hope.
Mm-hmm.
We can't manufacture, we can't make it up, you know? There's anything you'd like to add to that?
What I've been listening. What remind me what the actual question was where we started?
No, you're good. It was what like people in unideal situations like divorce, separation, where they really cannot make this spousal unity a priority.
Gosh, I mean, I don't know if I like going last. I don't have to like really think of anything novel. You guys have already said it. I mean, yeah, it requires a turning to the Lord. I mean, there's a reason why we're talking about this kind of hierarchy here of God, spouse, and then children.
Right.
I think that the marriages I've seen that run into danger quickly is when spouses run into the temptation to make each other their God.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's so true.
In a very strange way, some of the most faithful people I've met are the ones who have struggled the most in marriage, because I think that they've realized that they can't rely on their spouse as much as they may have at one time felt all these mushy-gushy good feelings. They can't let their spouse be a substitution for what only God can be in their lives, right? Which is the source of all strength, all wisdom, all good things in the marriage come from Him, like a overflowing font, right? So I think there's so many good things that happen when your recourse is, I go first to the Lord in prayer, right? I get angry in my marriage, I go to the Lord. I am joyful in my marriage, I go to the Lord. Mm-hmm. It's just, I don't know, it sounds like almost like, obvious, but, you see what happens when that isn't the thing that people, I'm angry in my marriage, so I just go and I start berating my children. You know what I mean?
Right.
Gosh, I mean, we just brought it up kind of when you're talking about Dr. Ben Carson, right? Mm-hmm. This idea of like he never saw his mom complain. You can only imagine how much prayer she was probably doing in those, to take that frustration, that anger, to say, rather than going to my children and making this their problem, I'm going to the Lord who can really give me the solace. And, of course, community and family are helpful. Yes. Mm-hmm. But I find that the real problems come when we try to bypass God and we take all those raw emotions and we just, they become unleashed on people who don't deserve it. I've encountered a lot of, children of dysfunctional marriages who are in this position where they're basically end up being like mediators between because they just get emotionally dumped on every day, and they become like, kind of what you were saying, Joe. I mean, mom or dad is just complaining about the spouse the whole day. And then the kid is hearing mom complain, then dad complain. It's like, I don't know what to do. Now I feel like I've got to take care of everything. It's like a recipe for very, very quick dysfunction. So.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Our 11-year-old always reminds us that. Sometimes she'll say things and we're like, where did you get that? And she goes, you forget, I am listening to everything you say. I hear everything you say. And it's just a good reminder that they hear us, right? And we need to compartmentalize some of that sometimes.
Yeah, that's we call that parental inversion in inner healing ministry, where one spouse just treats one of their kids as another spouse because the real spouse isn't fulfilling that function.
Yes.
And they don't know the harm they're doing with their own kids and everything. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, because it just becomes an exercise of unburdening, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I have all this stuff somebody needs to hear it. Mm-hmm. I don't have a relationship with the Lord, so I don't really feel comfortable going to Him in prayer. Right. So here's, 12-year-old Johnny who just gets, dumped on for 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And now what does he do with all that?
Yeah.
It's really, really difficult. It's like, the spouse feels better about it because, now I got all that off my chest. The poor kid is just like a sponge soaking up toxicity day after day after day.
Yeah. I'm not prepared to give like a step-by-step process as to what to do if you don't know what to do. There's just a lot of people out there that just don't know what to do. Yeah. They don't know the next step. Even young parents, I met over the weekend, I met some young parents that they just don't know the proper discipline with their kids and things like that. But I really do believe this, that if you take it to the Lord, you're persistent with it, that God will lead you to that next step. Yeah. So He's not going to abandon you.
Yeah, I what I found in marriage is I like to hear other people's ideas. I like to research, read, or talk to people that I trust. But it's really like my own heart that gauges what's going to work for us. It's not a copy paste thing. And I think that's what it's frustrating, right? It's like, you just want okay, I'll just copy everything that Joe and Elisa did, and then our marriage will be whatever, right?
Yeah,
and you're like, no,
You wouldn't do that.
That's not how marriage works. Every instantiation of this sacrament, every instance of this sacrament is specific. It's different. It's like a snowflake. It's like a piece of a mosaic, right? That's unique. And I think that's only something that can be discovered in prayer, right?
Jacob, just to add to that, I mean, I think one of the real reasons there's no copy and paste option for marriages is because so often what you're observing in other people's marriages are things that some of the strongest marriages I know were born from a lot of difficulty, right? It's a lot of suffering, a lot of trial. And those are the kind of things where it's like, yeah, I can write a book about it, but I'm not going to I don't want to emulate that, right? But you forget, the Lord's going to give you your own crosses, right? Whether you want them or not. So that's the part of it that can't be translated from one couple to another. It's like, yeah, you can have some ideas of general ideas of what makes a healthy couple, what makes a healthy marriage, but real transformation comes through the cross, and I can't take your cross from you and bring it to me. The Lord is going to give me my own crosses.
Right.
Yeah, I heard it one time. We were at a dad's and son football game. So, the sons that were playing high school football, the dads were invited, once a year, just to join them. And this guy got up there and started talking to his son, and we take turns talking to our own son and everything. But for some reason, he quoted Marcus Aurelius.
Oh, yes.
And Marcus Aurelius, and I'm like, I was drawn to them. Where did that come from? Because Marcus Aurelius, and he was no Christian, but he was a Roman emperor. But he said, whatever is in the way becomes the way. And it goes to say that your problem may be part of the solution, your long-term solution. So don't get discouraged if you're hitting snags and you can't seem to get out of a hole. That could be a big part of your remedy and long-term solution in the future that the Lord will use.
Amen.
Yeah.
I think that's a really, really powerful insight, and that's the sacrifice of marriage right there. Is choosing to believe that, and then loving another person in that every single day, right? And that's, I think, what's so beautiful.
When Elisa's in the way.
We'll talk about that later.
You guys got a long drive home coming in. So speaking of long drive home, what would you say are some practical ways for families or for spouses to prioritize each other? You guys mentioned kind of long drives. We mentioned a lot of random things throughout the episode. I mean, counseling for couples that need it, praying together. But what are some other ways? We mentioned conversations. But yeah.
You can't replace time.
Yeah.
So I remember probably about maybe 15 years ago, we were really good at sitting on the couch and talking to each other after kids went to bed.
Yeah.
And we still do that. Recently we went out to the front porch and talked, or the back porch actually. So having that time, and it's probably going to change from day to day, but just to be committed to that, Another thing too is that that Elisa and I do is praying together as a couple, and praying using our own words, like thanking God for the spouse, not just using formal prayers, which is good, but using your own words to thank God for your spouse and to pray into whatever they're going through. It's such a beautiful form of intimacy that I find to be, really rewarding, actually. So
just holding each other's hand. It could be really simple. Just hold each other's hand and just say, okay, Lord, I just want you to be in this moment, and speak from the heart and offer up what's on your heart. Thank God for what you have, and just like you said, enter in that moment. Sometimes, though, on a practical way, sometimes we to do something different. Sometimes we've chosen a book that we were both interested in, and we kind of read it together separately, but then talked about it. And I this sounds crazy. It's not always easy, but even doing things like vacations or day trips or just having those shared experiences, I think go a very long way. I mean, there are times we just had our family home for Thanksgiving. Our kids came home, most of them, and we were talking about all the shared experiences over the years. And we did not do this perfectly, but we limited a lot of their Christmas gifts down at one point, and we opted for experiences. So
going to the water park.
Going to water parks, taking short family vacations. So for several years, the majority of our Christmas money that we set aside would go towards a family trip.
That's awesome.
And, they still got gifts under the tree, but it was not as many as they would have.
Right.
And that conversation we had about the experiences, we didn't talk about any of the toys they got.
No.
So the material things were background,
right.
But it's the experience that really contributes to unity. Yeah.
And just a short, sweet story, if I can share it. Our daughter, we used to take very long car drives because there was 8 of us, and I could never afford 8 plane tickets. So we would take a lot of road trips. And so our daughter, we asked her just before she got married how she wanted to go to the church. How do you want to get to the church for your wedding? Yeah. And she said, and I'm going to tear up when I say this, but she said that she would like all of us to pile into a van. And we did. We rented a van. So we didn't pile in. We were ironed. And
we played dad songs.
We took one last road trip on the way to the church when she got married. And it came from those shared experiences.
Yeah.
And so that's a very sweet story. But that's what I think in the long run, when we reminisce on the days, I think those will be highlights.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point is that the shared experiences can also involve kids. Like you don't have to always view the kids as the enemy to your own personal time, right?
Right.
Like that's a temptation, right? It's like we have to carve it away from the kids and to try and actually, even if you can't find time away for periods, invite the kids into that, and allow that shared experience to be a family experience because they're the product of your love, like they are your love incarnate, and like bonding together as a family is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Practically, I think we'd be remiss not to mention the 5 love languages and those kind of things that are helpful. Reading that book or taking the quizzes to kind of see love languages of spouses. Right. Something that my wife and I try to do is we're funny, we're weird, but there's other couples that do this too, so we're not that weird. We try to have like quarterly offsites. So we give the kids away and then we go off to like a coffee shop and okay, let's vision about our family, and then we start to build out like. Kind of our
like something you would do.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. It sounds very Jacob, doesn't it? But that works for us. That may not work for other families, but that's another idea.
Yeah, that's the most Jacob thing I've ever heard.
Like I said, we give them away.
Yeah. Take them now.
Take them. And then we're gonna go vision about what the next months look like, and so things like that are fun too. So getting creative with that, right, and dialoguing with the spouse about that is so key. So,
you get the empty nesters that have some couples have such a hard time.
Yeah.
They look at one another and they're like, "Who are you?" But if you prioritize the things we talked about and time with each other, prayer and things like that, you're not gonna have that problem so much.
And talk about those upcoming challenges together before they come.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. Yeah.
And being able to bond about them as a couple rather than read into them when they happen and then be isolated from each other. Right. So proactivity. Yay. Cool.
Very good.
Father, anything else that you feel like we are missing that you'd like to add before we close this in a magnificent prayer?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, then take it away.
All right. I always try to put a bow on everything through my prayer, but I don't know. It'd be tough. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Mighty God, thank you for this opportunity to have another good conversation about marriage and family. Thank you for Joe and Elisa, for Jacob and Rachel, for just all the good, faithful married couples here at our parish. Thank you for all those who are listening today. Just pray that that they hear whatever it is that they needed to hear today. pray especially for couples who might be going through challenging seasons in their marriage as well. Whether it's issues with children, just struggles between in spousal relationships. Just pray that they may have the patience, the wisdom to go to you first, or to seek your wisdom, your guidance, your counsel, and so that they can have the strength to be able to navigate those difficulties with the knowledge that it's always the crosses that bring us closer to you and make us stronger and bring us to life. Lord, we know marriage is a relationship that is unconditional, covenantal, and just requires showing up every single day. So just pray that you give us all the strength to love every single day, not just in the good times, not just in the lovey-dovey, mushy-gushy ways, but in the ways that really test our mettle and allow us to show up and always give it our best. And may Almighty God bless you all. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
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 Awesome. Thank you, Father. We always end with a weekly challenge. So the challenge for this week is to find one small, concrete way you can make your spouse a priority this week. Maybe talk about that with your spouse.
And to go pick up your favorite Scott Hahn book.
Yes,
Read
and
Yes.
and then have an entirely quarterly offsite as well. Yeah, that's all that in a week. So that sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you,
welcome.
Father.
It was great.
And we'll see you guys for our last episode coming up next week on Passing on the Faith. God bless.